They say time heals everything, but prison doesn't heal you. It changes you. 10 years, 10 long years behind bars for a crime I didn't commit. And every night, I replayed the same memory. My wife's face the day they took me away. When I finally walked out, I thought the worst was over, but then I saw her, standing in my old house, wearing my ring, holding my brother's hand. I could have handled the betrayal. I could have handled the lies. But when my son, my own son, showed up at my door last night and asked me that one question I've been dreading for a decade, I realized my story wasn't over. It was just beginning. I still remember the sound of the rain that night. It was cold, heavy, and unforgiving, just like the years that were waiting for me. My name is David Miller, and 10 years ago, I was just a simple man, a husband, a father, a small-town mechanic who loved his family more than anything. I thought love was enough to protect me from anything. I was wrong. That night, I came home late from work. The smell of dinner was still in the air. My little boy Ethan had already fallen asleep in his room, holding his toy truck. My wife Sarah was in the kitchen, her hands shaking as she pretended to wash the dishes. When I heard the sirens outside, I thought it was just another accident on the highway. But then they stopped, right in front of our house. When the officers knocked on my door, Sarah didn't even look at me. She just whispered, "David, I'm sorry." And before I could ask what she meant, the handcuffs were on my wrists. They said I had robbed a bank, that the security footage showed me driving the getaway car. My truck. The same old truck I'd used for years to pick Ethan up from school. I told them it wasn't me, that someone must have stolen it, but everything that could prove my innocence was gone. The security tapes at my garage, deleted. My phone's GPS, erased. And the few people who could vouch for me suddenly wanted nothing to do with it. When I stood in court, I looked for Sarah. I thought she'd stand beside me, but instead, she took the stand. Her voice cracked when she said I'd been acting strange, desperate for money, angry at the world. She cried, but every word she spoke cut deeper than the one before. I kept telling myself she was scared, that she was being pressured. But when the judge asked if she believed I did it, she nodded. The gavel came down, and just like that, my life ended. 10 years in prison. 10 years for something I didn't do. When they dragged me away, Ethan was crying, calling for me. Sarah didn't even hold him. She just turned away. That moment burned itself into my soul. Prison changes you. The walls don't just keep you in, they squeeze the life out of who you used to be. I stopped counting the days. I stopped hoping Sarah would write. But then, one morning, a guard slipped a letter under my cell door. No return address, no name, just one line written in familiar handwriting. "You were right, I'm sorry." I knew that handwriting. It was hers, Sarah's. And that one sentence kept me alive for years. It meant someone knew the truth. When I finally walked out of that gate 10 years later, I had nothing. No home, no family, no friends. I just wanted to disappear, but I couldn't resist checking where they were, Sarah and Ethan. She'd moved 2 towns away. Married again? When I saw the name on her mailbox, my stomach dropped. Miller. Not because she kept my name, but because she took my brother's. Mark. My brother. The man I trusted more than anyone. I remember standing there, frozen, watching them laugh together at the grocery store like nothing ever happened. Sarah looked happy. Mark looked proud. And Ethan. He was a young man now, taller, older. He looked so much like me, but when our eyes met, there was no spark of recognition, no warmth. He looked through me like I was a stranger. In that moment, I realized Sarah hadn't just betrayed me. She had erased me. I turned and walked away that day. I told myself I'd let the past die, start over somewhere new. But you can't rebuild a life when the pieces of your old one are still buried inside you. For months, I tried to move on. Found a small job at a garage, rented a cheap apartment. I kept my head down, kept quiet. Then last night, there was a knock on my door, slow, hesitant. I opened it and my heart stopped. It was Ethan, my son. He looked older, stronger, but those eyes, I'd know them anywhere. He didn't smile, didn't hug me. He just stood there, his voice shaking as he asked, "Dad, did you really do it?" And in that moment, I realized something. He hadn't come for the truth. He came for something far more dangerous. For a moment, I couldn't find my voice. My own son, standing there, asking me if I was a criminal. 10 years of silence, 10 years of nightmares, and this was the first thing he said to me. I wanted to hug him, to tell him everything would be okay, but my body wouldn't move. I could see the doubt in his eyes, the confusion, the fear. He was old enough now to understand lies, but still too young to know how deep betrayal could run. I stepped aside and told him to come in. He hesitated for a second, then crossed the doorway like he was entering enemy ground. We sat in the small kitchen, the kind that still smelled like machine oil from the work I'd been doing. I poured him a glass of water, but he didn't touch it. His hands were trembling slightly. "Mom doesn't know I'm here," he said quietly. "If she did, she'd lose it." I asked him why he came, and he just stared at the table for a long time before answering. "Because I need to know the truth. Uncle Mark said you confessed, that you blame Mom for everything." My chest tightened. Mark. Of course. The same man who took my wife, my family, my name. He'd been poisoning Ethan's mind all this time. I tried to stay calm. I told Ethan that I never confessed, that I never robbed anyone, that someone set me up, but he didn't believe me. He looked straight into my eyes and said, "Then why did Mom cry every night for years? Why did she say she had no choice?" That line hit me like a hammer. No choice. What did she mean by that? For 10 years, I'd convinced myself that Sarah turned against me because she stopped loving me, because she found comfort in someone else. But what if there was more? What if she was protecting something? Or someone? I asked Ethan if he knew anything about the night of the robbery. He shook his head but looked uncomfortable. Then, almost whispering, he said, "Uncle Mark told me he was with you that night. He said you panicked and ran, that he tried to stop you." I froze. That was the first time anyone had mentioned Mark being there. The official case file never placed him anywhere near that scene. I leaned forward and asked him to tell me exactly what Mark had said. Ethan hesitated, then continued, "He said he tried to help you after, that Mom begged him to protect me because you were dangerous." Dangerous. That word tasted like rust in my mouth. For 10 years, I'd been the monster in my own son's bedtime stories. I took a deep breath, fighting to keep my anger down. I told Ethan that his uncle was lying, that I would never hurt either of them. But the truth was, it didn't matter what I said. He needed proof. We sat there in silence for a while. The rain started again, tapping gently on the window. Ethan finally spoke. "I found something in Mom's closet last week," he said. "It was a photo of you and her, and a letter. It was torn, but I saw part of it. It said, 'They'll come for him soon. I have no choice.'" Those words made my blood run cold. I asked if he still had the letter. He nodded slowly and pulled a folded paper from his jacket. My hands shook as I opened it. It was the same handwriting from the letter I got in prison, the same shaky lines. But this one had more. They said they'd hurt Ethan if I didn't testify. "I'm sorry, David. For 10 years, I'd hated her. For 10 years, I'd cursed her name. And now, sitting there with my son, I realized the truth. Sarah didn't betray me because she wanted to. She did it because she was protecting our boy." My throat tightened. I couldn't speak. Ethan watched me, his eyes filling with tears as he realized what that letter meant. Everything he'd believed, everything he'd been told, it was all a lie. I saw the guilt in his face, the same guilt I'd carried for a decade. He whispered, "Dad, what are we going to do?" I looked at the letter again, then at him. "We're going to find out who did this," I said quietly. "And we're going to make it right." For the first time in years, I saw something in his eyes. Trust, fragile, trembling, but real. I knew this was only the beginning. Whoever set me up wasn't just trying to destroy my life. They wanted to erase me completely. And if Sarah had been forced to testify, someone powerful must have been behind it. Ethan stayed the night on the couch. I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, holding that torn letter under the faint light of a street lamp. replaying every moment of the past in my head. Every visit from Mark, every strange look from Sarah before the arrest, every detail I'd ignored. And slowly, the pieces started to fit together in ways that made my stomach turn. I remembered Mark showing up the day before the robbery, asking to borrow my truck. He said he needed to help a friend move some old furniture. I didn't think twice. I gave him the keys. The next day, my truck was used in the crime. He never mentioned borrowing it again. The realization hit me like a brick. It wasn't just betrayal, it was premeditated. My own brother had set me up. But why? Money? Jealousy? Or something darker? I looked at Ethan, sleeping on the couch, and I made a silent promise. I'd lost 10 years of his life. I wasn't going to lose another day. Tomorrow, I'd go back to the beginning, to the place where everything started, and this time, I wouldn't be the one running. Because if my brother stole my life, I was going to take it back. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. Ethan was still asleep on the couch, his arm hanging off the side, the torn letter clutched in his hand. For a moment, I just stood there watching him. 10 years had gone by without hearing his voice, without seeing him grow, and now he was right there, in my home, under my roof, and yet everything still felt fragile, like one wrong word could make it all fall apart again. I made some coffee and sat at the table, staring at the steam rising from the cup. My mind wouldn't stop spinning. Mark, Sarah, the trial. Every missing piece that never made sense now started to connect in the ugliest way. I couldn't prove anything yet, but deep down, I already knew the truth. My brother had used me, and Sarah had paid the price for trying to protect our son. When Ethan woke up, he looked lost, unsure of what to say. I told him to eat something, but he barely touched the food. "What are you going to do, Dad?" he finally asked. I looked at him and said the only thing I could. "I need to talk to your mother." He looked nervous. "She won't want to see you. Uncle Mark, he'll make sure of that." I nodded. "That's exactly why I have to." We drove quietly. The town hadn't changed much. Same streets, same tired buildings, same memories I'd tried to forget. But as we turned into the neighborhood where Sarah lived, my chest tightened. Every house looked warm, alive. Mine had always been filled with laughter once. When we stopped outside her place, I saw her through the window. She was sitting at the kitchen table, holding a cup of tea, staring at nothing. For a second, I almost turned the car around. But then, she looked up and saw me. Her eyes widened, and the cup slipped from her hands, shattering on the floor. I got out of the car and walked up the porch. She opened the door before I even knocked. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. We just stood there, 10 years of silence stretching between us. Her voice finally broke it. "David, what are you doing here?" I held up the letter. "You wrote this." She froze. Her lips parted, but no words came out. I stepped closer. "They said they'd hurt Ethan if you didn't testify." "Who are they, Sarah?" Tears welled in her eyes. She turned away, whispering, "You shouldn't be here. If Mark finds out—" I interrupted. "He already knows, Sarah. He knows everything. He's been feeding lies to our son for years." She looked at me, shaking her head. "You don't understand. Mark didn't just lie. He was part of it." I felt my stomach twist. Part of what? She sank into a chair, her hands trembling. The robbery. It was never supposed to happen like that. Mark and his friends set it up. He needed money. He was in debt, gambling, something bad. He told me it was just a small job, that no one would get hurt. But when it went wrong, he panicked. He used your truck, your name, everything. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. "And you helped him?" Her voice broke. "I didn't know until it was too late. The night before your arrest, he came to me. He said if I didn't testify, he'd make sure Ethan disappeared. I didn't know what to do. I thought I was saving our son. I wanted to scream, to hate her. But the truth was, I saw the fear in her eyes, the same fear I'd felt in prison every single day. She hadn't betrayed me out of choice. She'd been cornered, trapped. "Sarah," I said softly, "you could have told someone. You could have told me." She shook her head, tears falling down her cheeks. They had people everywhere, David, even the police. I didn't know who to trust. I felt like the room was closing in. My whole life, my freedom, my marriage, my son. It had all been destroyed by the person I'd once called my brother. Where is he now? I asked. She hesitated. He's not the same anymore. He drinks, he gets angry, he's paranoid. Ever since you got out, he's been on edge. He thinks you'll come after him. I laughed bitterly. Maybe I should. She looked at me terrified. David, please, don't do anything stupid. If you go after him, he'll destroy what's left of your life. He still has connections, dangerous ones. I stared at her for a long moment. He already destroyed my life. Before she could reply, Ethan came to the door. He'd been listening. His face was pale, his eyes wet. Uncle Mark did this? He asked quietly. He's the reason you went to prison? Sarah tried to stop him from coming closer, but he stepped inside. Tell me the truth, Mom. She looked at him, her lips trembling, and finally nodded. Yes. Ethan's fists clenched. He lied to me. He made me hate my own father. Sarah tried to reach for him, but he pulled away and turned to me. We can go to the police, right? They'll fix this? I shook my head. Not unless we have proof. After 10 years, a confession won't be enough. We need something solid. He looked at me with determination I'd never seen before. Then we'll find it. Before Sarah could stop us, Ethan grabbed his jacket. I followed him out to the car. For the first time, we were on the same side. As we drove away, I saw Sarah standing on the porch, crying silently. Part of me wanted to go back, to hold her, to tell her it was okay. But another part of me knew. It wasn't over yet. Ethan asked where we were going. I looked straight ahead and said, to the garage, the one Mark used to visit before everything happened. If he left anything behind, that's where we'll find it. The sky was turning gray as we drove, the same kind of gray that hung over my life for the last decade. But this time, it felt different. I wasn't running anymore. I was chasing the truth. And I knew, deep down, that once we found it, nothing would ever be the same again. We drove for almost an hour in silence. The road stretched out in front of us, empty and gray, just like the years I'd lost. Ethan sat beside me, staring out the window, his reflection flickering with every passing light. I could tell his mind was racing, just like mine. Everything he believed about his family, his childhood, it was all falling apart. When we reached the old garage, it looked smaller than I remembered. The paint was peeling, the roof sagging, the smell of oil and rust thick in the air. It used to be my world, the place where I fixed cars, laughed with customers, built a life. Now, it felt like a graveyard. Ethan followed me inside, holding a flashlight. Are you sure he'd leave something here? He asked. I nodded. Mark never cleaned up after himself. If there's anything that connects him to that night, it'll be here. We searched for hours. Old boxes, tools, drawers full of forgotten parts. Nothing but dust and memories. I was starting to think we'd wasted our time when Ethan called out, Dad, look at this. He was kneeling beside an old metal cabinet in the corner. The lock was rusted, but he'd managed to pry it open. Inside was a small box wrapped in plastic. My hands were shaking as I lifted it out. Inside were stacks of old papers, a few photos, and a flash drive. My heart started pounding. This is it, I whispered. We plugged the drive into my old laptop. The screen flickered to life, and there it was, folders dated 10 years ago. One was labeled Blueprints, another Payments, and then one more DM, my initials. I opened it. Inside were scanned documents, bank transactions, surveillance photos, copies of court files. But what caught my eye was a series of emails between Mark and someone listed only as HR. Ethan leaned closer. Who's HR? I scrolled down to the bottom of the thread. The last email was from the night before my arrest. Everything's in place. He'll take the fall. Make sure the police get the footage before midnight. We'll move the money tomorrow. And then Mark's reply, got it, but Sarah's getting nervous. She might talk. Handle it. You know what's at stake. That was it. No names, no company, just initials. HR. Whoever that was, they weren't just involved. They were in control. I leaned back, my chest tightening. This wasn't just about Mark being jealous or desperate. Someone else had orchestrated everything. Someone with the power to erase evidence and buy silence. Ethan's voice broke my thoughts. Dad, look. He pointed to one of the payment files. It showed large deposits, tens of thousands of dollars, made to Mark's account over several months. Each one came from the same source, Hendricks Realty. My stomach dropped. I knew that name. Hendricks Realty wasn't just any company. It was the biggest development firm in our county, and back then, I'd been the mechanic who serviced their trucks. I had seen things, cash payments, late-night drop-offs, paperwork that didn't add up. I remembered once confronting one of their drivers about a suspicious delivery. The next day, that same driver disappeared, and a week later, I was arrested. It suddenly made sense. They hadn't just needed a scapegoat, they needed someone close enough to take the fall. Someone who wouldn't have the power to fight back. That someone was me. Ethan looked at me, his eyes wide. So, it wasn't just Uncle Mark? I shook my head slowly. No, he was just a pawn. Someone else was pulling the strings. The air in the garage felt heavy. I could almost hear my heart pounding in my ears. For 10 years, I'd thought the betrayal ended with Sarah and Mark. But now, I realized there was a whole web behind it. Suddenly, headlights flashed through the dusty windows. A car pulled up outside. Ethan tensed. Dad, who is that? I motioned for him to stay quiet. We crouched behind one of the workbenches as the car door opened. Footsteps echoed inside the garage. Slow, confident, familiar. Then I heard his voice. David, Mark called out, his tone half taunting, half nervous. I knew you couldn't let it go. He stepped into the light. He looked older, worn out, but the arrogance in his smile was the same. He was holding something in his hand, a gun. Where's the kid? He asked. I stood slowly. You mean your nephew? I said coldly. He knows everything now. Mark laughed, shaking his head. You shouldn't have dragged him into this, brother. You should have stayed gone. Ethan stepped out before I could stop him. You lied to me, he shouted. You ruined everything. Mark pointed the gun at me. You don't understand, Ethan. None of you do. I didn't have a choice. They own me. Who? I asked. Who's they? Mark hesitated, glancing toward the door like he was expecting someone. You think it was just about money? You think Hendricks Realty was just a company? You have no idea who you were working for. He took a deep breath, his hand shaking. You were supposed to fix one of their trucks. You saw something you shouldn't have, something that could ruin them. They told me to make it disappear. My blood ran cold. What did I see, Mark? He looked at me, eyes full of guilt. You saw the cargo manifest. You thought it was construction materials. It wasn't. It was cash, David. Millions in unmarked bills. And the people behind it... He stopped mid-sentence, his eyes darting toward the window. A faint red dot appeared on his chest. Mark, don't move, I yelled. But before I could reach him, the gunshot went off. Not from his weapon, but from outside. The window shattered and Mark fell to the ground, blood blooming across his shirt. Ethan screamed. I grabbed him and pulled him down behind the bench. The headlights outside turned off. Silence filled the air, heavy and suffocating. I crawled to Mark's side. His breath was shallow, his eyes fading. He gripped my arm weakly. It's not over, he whispered. Check the drive. Room 317, Hendricks Tower. And then he went still. Ethan was shaking, tears streaming down his face. Dad, what just happened? I looked down at my brother's lifeless body, the gun still in his hand, and then at the shattered window where the shot had come from. Someone had been watching us, someone who didn't want the truth to come out. I picked up the flash drive, my hands covered in blood, and looked at my son. It means, son, I said quietly. We just opened the wrong door. I don't remember driving, just the rain, the blur of headlights, the flash drive clenched in my fist like it was the only thing keeping me alive. Ethan sat next to me, silent, his hands trembling. My brother's blood was still on my sleeve. We didn't say a word for miles. I could tell he was terrified, but not just by what he saw. He was scared of what he didn't know. "Dad," he finally whispered, "are we in danger?" I glanced at him, my voice rough. "We were always in danger, son. We just didn't know it." Hendricks Tower loomed ahead, 30 stories of glass and steel, reflecting the city lights like a silent monster. It was almost midnight, but one floor still glowed. Floor 31. That was strange. The flash drive mentioned room 317, but Hendricks Tower only had 30 floors. Still, I parked across the street and studied the building. The rain was coming down harder now, streaking the windshield, turning everything into a distorted mirror. Ethan swallowed. "Are we really going in there?" I nodded. "If we don't, everything your uncle died for means nothing." We entered through the underground lot. The security desk was empty. Too empty. A single monitor flickered with static. It felt like someone was expecting us. We took the service elevator. As it climbed, each floor number beeped softly, echoing in my chest like a countdown. 23, 24, 25. My pulse quickened. 30, then the elevator didn't stop. The screen blinked once, then showed 31. Ethan looked at me, eyes wide. "Dad, there is a 31st floor." The doors opened. The room was huge, dimly lit, filled with rows of computers, servers humming quietly. On the far end, glass walls overlooked the city. And standing there, with her back to us, was Sarah. My heart froze. She turned slowly, her face pale, her expression unreadable. 10 years had changed her, but her eyes, they were the same. "David," she said softly, "you shouldn't have come." Ethan stepped forward, his voice trembling. "Mom?" Her eyes flicked to him, full of guilt. "Sweetheart, you shouldn't be here either." I clenched my fists. "Mark's dead, Sarah, and I'm done with lies. What is this place? What did you and Hendricks Realty do?" She looked past me toward the servers. "It's not what you think." "Then make me understand," I said, stepping closer. "You let me rot in prison for 10 years. You made our son believe I was dead. You owe me the truth." She hesitated, then sighed, a sound so heavy it almost broke me. "It started with Mark," she said. "He was deep in debt. Hendricks Realty offered him a way out, smuggle money through construction contracts. But then you found the manifests. They panicked. They couldn't risk exposure, so they needed a fall guy." Her voice cracked. "I tried to warn you, David. I really did. But they said if I didn't cooperate, they'd hurt Ethan. They showed me pictures of him walking home from school." My stomach twisted. "You think I could live with that?" she whispered. "I thought, if you took the blame, they'd let you live. I didn't know they'd frame you so completely. I thought I could fix it later, when things calmed down. But they owned everything. Police, lawyers, judges." She wiped a tear, shaking her head. "By the time I realized there was no fixing it, you were already gone." The silence that followed was suffocating. Ethan looked at her in disbelief. "You let them do that to him?" Sarah broke down. "I'm so sorry. I wanted to tell you for years, but they kept watching us. Even now." I looked around the room. "Who's they, Sarah?" She hesitated. "You've already met him." Before I could respond, a calm, deep voice echoed behind us. "I was wondering when you'd put it together, David." We turned. A tall man stepped out from behind one of the glass panels, gray suit, silver hair, and a cold smile. I recognized him instantly. Harold Rhodes, CEO of Hendricks Realty. The same man who shook my hand the day I was arrested. He looked exactly as I remembered, untouched by time, power dripping from every word. "You should have stayed quiet," Rhodes said. "You had a new life waiting for you. But no, you had to dig." I stepped forward. "You destroyed my life. You framed me." He smirked. "I preserved order. You were a liability, David. You stumbled into something too big to understand. Cash shipments were just the surface. What we moved beneath those blueprints wasn't money. It was data." I frowned. "Data?" Rhodes' smile widened. "The kind that controls elections, investments, entire cities. You think Hendricks Realty just builds houses? We build influence. I could barely process his words. And Mark was weak, he said simply. He talked too much, so we silenced him. My blood boiled. You had him killed. Rhodes shrugged. He made his choice. Ethan clenched his fists. You ruined our family. Rhodes tilted his head slightly, studying him. Family? No, Ethan. Your family was the price of survival. But you, young man, you could be the future. You've got your father's stubbornness. And my company could use someone like you. Ethan took a step back, disgusted. You think I'd work for you? Rhodes' smile faded. You'll come around? You all do. He nodded towards Sarah. Your mother already did. Ethan froze. What do you mean? Rhodes turned to her, almost pitying. Tell him, Sarah. He deserves to know. She looked at the floor, trembling. Ethan, Tell him, I shouted. Tears streamed down her face. I didn't just cooperate with them, David. I joined them. They made me an executive, part of the board. I thought if I was on the inside, I could protect Ethan. But over time, I became one of them. Ethan staggered back as if struck. Mom? I felt something inside me break. 10 years of anger, pain, betrayal, and now this. Rhodes watched us with satisfaction. See? The truth always hurts more than the lie. But then his expression shifted. He pressed a button on a remote. The screens around us lit up with live footage. The garage, the car, even my house. He leaned closer, voice calm. You think you're free, David, but I've been watching you since the day you got out. You're not free. You're bait. My heart stopped. Bait for what? He smiled. For the ones who still think they can bring me down. Before I could react, alarms blared. Red lights flashed across the room. Sarah gasped. They're coming, she whispered. The cleanup team. They're going to erase everything. Rhodes turned to leave through a hidden door, but I lunged, grabbing him by the collar. Not this time, he struggled, shouting over the alarms. You can't stop it. You never could. Ethan grabbed the flash drive from my pocket. Dad, the servers. Maybe we can upload it, expose him. I turned to Sarah. You said you wanted to fix it, then help us now. She hesitated, then ran to the console, typing furiously. I can open the system, but it'll take time. Rhodes laughed, blood trickling from his lip. Time's the one thing you don't have. The floor shook, an explosion from somewhere below. Smoke began filling the room. Ethan shouted, Dad! I grabbed him and pulled him toward the elevator, but Sarah yelled, No, go, I'll hold it open. Sarah, don't! Go, David! She cried. For him! The smoke swallowed her as we got into the elevator. The doors closed, sealing her fate. As the elevator descended, I held Ethan close. The flash drive was still in his hand. When we reached the ground floor, the tower above us erupted in flames. We stood in the rain, watching everything burn, the lies, the pain, the truth. Ethan whispered, She stayed behind for us. I looked up at the fire reflecting in his eyes. No, son, I said quietly. She stayed behind for redemption. He turned to me. What now? I took a deep breath, watching the flash drive flicker with a faint blue light. Now, I said, we find out who really built Hendricks Realty. Because if Rhodes was just another pawn, then the real enemy was still out there, watching, and I wasn't done yet. The fire burned through the night. We stood there for hours, watching Hendricks Tower collapse into itself, sparks rising like ghosts from the past. Every secret that had been buried inside those walls, gone. But the truth has a way of surviving fire, and it did. The next morning, we were on the run. The news called it an accidental explosion. No mention of Sarah, no mention of Rhodes, just another corporate tragedy. But deep down, I knew better. Ethan barely spoke. He stared out the motel window, silent, lost. The flash drive lay between us on the table, like it was alive, like it still had more to say. When he finally turned to me, his voice was soft, broken. Dad, Do you think Mom knew she wouldn't make it out? I swallowed hard. Yeah, she knew. He nodded, eyes glassy. Do you think she loved you after everything? I let out a long breath. That's the hardest part, son. I think she did. But love doesn't erase the things we do when we're scared. Silence. Just the sound of rain hitting the window. Then, Ethan whispered, "We should see what's on it." I hesitated. "Once we open it, there's no going back." He looked me dead in the eye. "We've already gone too far to stop now." I plugged the drive in, the files loaded, most corrupted by fire or time. But one folder survived, marked only with a single word: truth. Inside was a video, the date stamp, 2 weeks before my arrest. The footage showed a boardroom, men in suits, money, documents, contracts. And there, at the head of the table, was Harold Rhodes. But someone else was there too. Someone standing behind him, mostly in shadow. A woman. She handed him a file, her voice faint but clear. "He knows too much. Take care of it quietly." The camera shifted just enough to catch her face. It was Sarah, but then Rhodes looked past her, toward someone off camera, and said, "Don't worry, his own brother will deliver him to us. Your plan worked perfectly." A second voice answered, calm, deep, American, and when I heard it, my blood froze. It was a voice I hadn't heard in years, but one I could never forget. "Good. Once he's out of the picture, we can move forward with phase 2. The camera finally panned to the speaker. My father. The man I'd buried 15 years ago. I felt the air leave my lungs. Ethan looked at me, confused. "Grandpa? But you said he died in that car crash." I couldn't speak. My throat closed, my hands shaking. In the video, he looked older, colder. "David's too idealistic," he said. "He won't play along. We need someone ruthless, someone who understands the value of control." Rhodes nodded. "And Mark?" My father smirked. "He's loyal enough. Use him." Then the screen went black. I just sat there, frozen, numb, every betrayal, every wound, every nightmare I'd carried for 10 years. And the truth was worse than all of it combined. My father had built Hendricks Realty. My father had framed me. And my wife, my brother, my entire life. They were just tools in his design. I stood, pacing, every heartbeat louder than the last. "He's alive," I said. "He's been alive all along." Ethan stared at me, voice shaking. "Dad, if he did this, why? You're his son." I turned to him slowly. "No, Ethan, I was his mistake." The flash drive screen flickered again. A single message appeared at the bottom. "If you're seeing this, David, it means you finally stopped running. You were never meant to understand. You were meant to inherit." Ethan backed away. "What does that mean?" I looked down at the drive, realizing the awful truth. It wasn't just evidence. It was an invitation. And somewhere out there, my father was watching. Waiting. I closed the laptop slowly. "It means this isn't over." Ethan's eyes searched mine. "What are we going to do?" I smiled, tired, bitter, but alive. "We're going to finish what he started, but this time we do it our way." He frowned. "And if he finds us first?" I looked out the window, the sun just breaking through the storm. "Then he'll find out what it's like to lose everything he built." I turned to my son, voice low, steady. "Because I'm done being someone's pawn." The screen of the laptop flickered one last time. A new message appeared, as if typed in real time. "Welcome back, son." And the flash drive went dark. The sound of thunder rolled through the sky. Ethan whispered, "Dad, what if he's already here?" I didn't answer. I just stared at the screen, the reflection of those words glowing in my eyes. "Welcome back, son. 10 years ago, I lost everything because of my family. Now I know the truth. It was never about justice. It was about legacy. And this time, I'm not running from it.